lifeguard for a bunch of years, which if you're young and you're looking for a summer job, there is no better summer job. I mean, like, it is amazing. You just get to sit outside and twirl a whistle. I mean, that's the extent of the job. Is I can twirl a whistle better than anybody you've ever seen. I can twirl it and it'll wrap all around. I can twirl it and go, like, I'll alternate fingers. I can twirl it without looking. I can go behind my head. I can twirl a whistle like nobody you've ever seen. It's pretty amazing. But just being a lifeguard, like, you do have to, you have a responsibility. You're supposed to make sure everybody is safe. And that's one of those things. Like, I was a lifeguard at a place that had a set of pools as well as a lake. And so I kind of alternate between those two. And so a lot of whistle blowing and no running kind of statements, and whistle blowing and please don't spit water on the other kids kind of moments. But there were times, several times, when there was a moment when unattended children, which, man, parents, I mean, I guess I grew up in that age where parents just didn't pay attention. The unparented generation, right? And so there'd be these little kids, and man, they would just be swimming all day long, and I was their babysitter as the lifeguard, and I knew those kids well. But there were times where kids would get into the water, and whether it was in the pool that went from 3 feet down to 9, or if it was the lake, which went from 2 feet and just immediately dropped because it was a man-made lake and it was just dug out. So it would go 2 feet to 20 feet off a ledge. There were times when kids would bob out, right? A little bit further than they should have. They'd bounce, they'd bounce, they'd bounce, they'd bounce, and then you'd just see them go, whoop. And there was a moment where it was like, as the person watching them and making sure they don't die, you'd watch and you'd be like, are they coming back up or not? And you'd kind of give a little count, right? Like, what's a reasonable amount of time that kid could hold their breath before they reemerge if they can swim, or not reemerge, and then I need to jump off this little chair that I'm sitting in and make sure that they're all right. And so it was always interesting. Just that moment when they're holding their breath, I'm holding mine as well, because you're just like, uh-oh. and boom. And many times they would pop back up and everything would be fine, right? But sometimes they didn't. And sometimes I had to jump into the water. And I in my youth, I had images of Baywatch in my head, I've got the red can. I have long, flowing blonde hair. I did. That's true. I did. It was long, flowing blonde hair. I'm just running, the music's going. The reality was from here to the chairs, and there was a pool. And all I was doing was 2 hops, jump in the water, pull the kid out, right? But in my mind, it was this glorious moment of slow motion. Action, flowing, hair. The hair thing I'm really hung up on. I miss those days. But when you would rescue one of these kids, the moment of rescue was a powerful moment for them and me. I did my job, and that's great. But when you pull them out of the water, and there was that moment when they haven't been breathing, right, and they do the, you know what I'm talking about? That first gasp of air, and they're locking eyes with you, and they've got panic on their face, and I just lift them out of the water and be like, "You all right, bud?" Tell you what, I made friends for life in those moments. There were 6 and 7-year-old kids, 6, 7, and 8-year-old kids that were absolutely my best friend the rest of the summer. That they were at that pool or at that lake. They would make sure I was good. They would bring me drinks. They would tell their mom, like, oh, that's the guy. They were my little buddies from that point forward. There's something about that moment of rescue, which causes a little bit of clarity, causes a bond to happen, kind of changes your life because you weren't sure it was going to continue. In Jonah chapter 2. It's an interesting passage because it's the moment of rescue for him. Although as we look at this prayer that he prays in this moment of rescue it's a strange moment of rescue. So let's read together Jonah chapter 2, and we'll do the last verse from chapter 1 because it's just attacked onto this, and then it'll be 2, 1 through 10. Now the Lord provided, okay, wait, do we all know what's going on in the story? We got to check that, right? Jonah was asked to go to Nineveh. He was supposed to give the word of the Lord to these rebellious people, these evil, wicked people, and he was going to give the word of the Lord to them, and Jonah said, no thanks. I'm going to go somewhere else and do something else. I'm not interested in speaking to those people. I'm not interested in bringing word or warning from God. I'm going other directions. And so he turns around and goes the opposite way. And as he goes, he gets further and further away from God, running from God. And so he leaves the land and goes to a different land. He gets on a boat and takes off into sea. And then a storm hits and he is asleep down below in the boat. And as he's asleep there, the sailors are panicking and they're throwing cargo overboard and praying to their gods and doing everything they can to try and stop this supernatural storm that is happening. Something as weird is going on and they know it. Finally, the captain goes down and wakes up Jonah and says, what are you doing? How can you be sleeping when we're about to die? And Jonah's like, oh. And they say, cry out to your God or we're all going to die. And Jonah goes, oh. I don't want to do that. So then they say, let's cast lots. Let's figure out whose fault this is. And they do, and it's Jonah. Jonah's like, yeah, it's my fault. I'm running from God. They're like, what God? And he's like, the God that created the land and the sea and everything. He lives in heaven. You may have heard of him, Yahweh. And they're like, what are you doing? We're all going to die. What do we need to do to stop this from happening? And Jonah says, throw me in the water. Toss me overboard, and everything will be fine. They don't want to do it. These are kind of good guys. They don't want to kill somebody. They try everything they can, and finally Jonah's like, just do it. So they pray to God, and they say, God, well, this is not our norm. We don't want this, but here you go. And as they throw him into the sea, it says that the waters calm, and they are rescued, and they believe. So this is the moment from when that happens. Now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of this fish 3 days and 3 nights. From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God, and he said, in my distress, I called on the Lord, and he answered me. From the deep in the realm of the dead, I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths and into the very heart of the seas, and the currents swirled around me. All your waves and breakers swept over me. I said, I have been banished from your sight, yet I will look again toward your holy temple. The engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains I sank down. The earth beneath barred me in for forever. But you, Lord my God, brought my life up from this pit. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you. It rose to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them. But I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. I will say, salvation comes from the Lord. And the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto the dry land. This is the word of God for the people of God. So all of that stuff happens, and they finally throw him into the water, and then it says that God provided something. That God provided something for Jonah. It's fish. A very large fish. A fish that swallows him. Now this is the part of the story where every adult kind of goes, okay. But hang with me. Stay with me. Because what God does in this story, and what we learn in this story is powerful. Because in the moment of distress, in the moment of being thrown overboard, in the moment of wind and waves and breakers and drowning and seaweed wrapped around the head, in the moment of all of this, God provides. God provides. That's the word that's used there. And it's intentional. God is giving something to him. God is giving Jonah rescue. Now, Jonah has been on his way down this whole journey. When you read through Jonah chapter 1, it says that he receives word from God, and it says that he goes down to someplace else, down to Tarshish. And from there, he goes down to Joppa. And then he gets on a boat so that he can go down further away from God. And then he gets on the boat and goes down below into the hold of the boat to take a nap. And then whenever finally he's willing to recognize that all of this happening is because of him, he says, "Throw me down into the waters." There's an intentional thing that's happening in the story where we're seeing Jonah as he sinks, as he descends, as he goes down to where he hits the lowest point he possibly can. He descends down. And in the midst of all this is just chaos. And he has been living in chaos, right? From the moment he says no to God and the moment he starts running from God, like all of these things start happening, right? Like he's running away from God, so he's got to get out of the place he is to someplace else, right? So it's chaotic. It's just like, I have to run. It's a panic. It's a movement that he's doing, a bodily movement he's doing away from God. And so he's making this move and he's getting away from God and he's buying tickets and he's hiding in a boat. And ultimately ends up in the water, in this chaotic water, this fearful water, this water that these sailors believe they're going to die in. It's why they're panicking. It's why they're yelling at Jonah. It's why they're throwing him in the water. Like in the midst of all of this chaos that is of Jonah's creation, his disobedience and his distance, his certainty that these Ninevites don't deserve to hear anything from God, whether it be mercy or judgment. The distance that he's putting away from God. He's creating a chaotic world for himself and for others to live in. And in the midst of this sea of chaos, God provides. To somebody who has been going down, and hit the bottom. To somebody who has been running in disobedience and uncertainty and distance from God. And somebody that is creating chaos all around them, God provides. And what does God provide? A great fish to swallow him up. And now there's nothing. Right? And now there's nothing. There was chaos. There was running. There was disobedience. There was, I'm going to control what I do and how I do it and who gets to hear this message and who doesn't get to hear it. And I am going to run as fast as I can. And even when the chaos of the sea is coming up over the sides of the boat, I will sit there with my arms crossed and say, yeah, it's my fault. And I'm not going to pray. And I'm not going to reach out to God. And I'm not going to offer sacrifices. And I'm not going to do anything. And I will sit there idly by. And then finally, when I start to grow some concern for the people around me, say, fine, just throw me in the water. I'll die. I don't care. I'd rather die than go to Nineveh. I'd rather die than be obedient to the Lord. I'd rather die than God show mercy to these people that don't deserve. Just throw me in the water, and God will rescue you, and I'll just continue my descent. my descent into disobedience and running and certainty that I am right about this thing, I'll just die in it. And God provides rescue. He provides rescue in the form of the fish. See, we tend to, when I think of this story in the past, you tend to think of the great fish as the punishment in the story. That's kind of how we want to think of it, isn't it? We got punished, right? He did all these dumb things and he ran away from God, and so God stuck him in a fish for 3 days. Or it said God provided this thing, and it stopped everything. It stopped everything so that Jonah had to sit there with nothing more to do than think and reflect and pray. Because now he's controlling nothing. Now he can't wish harm on himself. Now he can't bring chaos into other people's lives. Now he's just stuck. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about, isn't it? How many times does the chaos in our lives overwhelm us? How many times does the amount of busyness in your life, the stress, the anxiety, the work stuff, the family stuff, the medical things that are going on, the bills that come your way, the stress of family and children that aren't listening to you the way that they should listen to you. Anyone know that problem? The parents who aren't listening to you the way that they should be. Anyone know that one? Can you tell I'm in the middle of that? but the stress and the anxiety and the people and the worry and the strife and then on top of that, the amount of busyness that we have in our lives just keeps us going and going and going, and we really don't have time to even take a breath and think and pray because there's this thing to deal with and that person over there and this bill to pay and oh man, there's a health issue over here and then rinse, repeat, over and over and over again, and then I've got all these things that I've jammed my life full of, and it's so busy and it's so stressful and it's so chaotic. And for Jonah, it all stopped so that he could pray and reflect and think. Oh man, how many times do we need to be intentional about things like that? Because the chaos of our lives is real. The stress and anxiety, the worry, sometimes the sin that we've created, it creates an absolute storm around us. And sometimes we need to just pray for a whale. God, would you just send a great fish? Would you provide a moment of pause so that I might just think and pray, so that I might repent, so that I might give you my worry, my stress, so that I might, from the depths, I'm crying out to you, God. These are sometimes the words that we need to say. And so we need pause. We need a moment. And if we're smart, we will plan for those moments and create the breaks. And if we're not, maybe, just maybe, God will provide one. And there'll be a moment of a fish. And you'll go, oh, this is awful, but it's what I needed. Have you ever felt like that before? This is awful, but I had to get off the ride. This is awful, but I had to stop the crazy train. This is awful, but I needed the breath. And so whatever the loss, whatever the challenge, whatever it is that's caused me to be swallowed by fish, like that moment of pause, you just go, should have figured that out before this moment. But here I am. A rescue in a fish. Sometimes, I've got a great quote, so I'm getting the glasses so that I can read it well. You never realize Jesus is all you need until sometimes he's all you have. That's a good quote, isn't it? You never realize Jesus is all you really needed when sometimes he's all you've got. When you find yourself in the fish and you go, oh, you're the answer to all this anyway, and I'm at my end. And so Jesus, yes, I need your help. And then times of confession happen, right? I have been disobedient. Or I have been so certain in what I think is right and wrong and what should happen next in my life and in theirs. And I have run from your presence, God. And I'm so sorry. This gift that Jonah receives is a moment of respite, a moment of silence, a moment of stillness. And into this moment, it was what happens in Jonah chapter 2. What does Jonah do? He prays. And what does Jonah pray? Man, he prays a very brief prayer, is the one that's written down. I'm sure he had some more time, and I'm sure he prayed a lot more things than this. But he prays this brief prayer that's recorded, and we've read the Psalms, and there's echoes of Psalms in this. And there are different kinds of psalms. There are songs of praise and rejoice and celebration and triumphal things, and there are songs of lament, where there's just absolute sorrow being presented before the Lord. There's psalms where people communicate frustration and anger toward God. And this psalm, this song, this prayer that he prays is a song of thanksgiving. That's the kind of prayer that he gives. And the echoes of it are all from psalms of thanksgiving. They're not psalms of lament that he echoes. They're not songs of frustration and worry and sadness. They're songs of gratitude. So Jonah is running from God, disobedient to God, hiding from God, descending down, 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 down as far as away he can get from God. He finds himself in a fish and he says, "Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you for providing for me." He says, "I cried out and you heard me." That's the verse 2 right there. I cried out and you heard me. I cried out and you answered me. It's kind of amazing, right? I cried out and you heard me. I cried out and you answered me. And you answered me in the form of the fish swallowing me, rescuing me from my own chaos. This is a psalm of thanks. And he goes into it and he describes the chaos around him, right? He talks about the waves crashing over his head. He talks about the swirling that he was being sucked down into. He talks about seaweed wrapping around his head. I mean, he talks about all of these things, but he says, "From the depths I cry out. In the midst of drowning in the waters around me, I cry out to you, God. And you hear me. And you listen to me. And you answer me." The chaos around him does not destroy him. Instead, it becomes a place where God can show his provision for him and ultimately rescue him. Verses 6 and 7. "But you, Lord my God, brought me up out from the pit. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you in your holy temple." God rescues him. And the thing I think we have to remember is that he rescues him, but he's still in the fish, right? The circumstance has not changed. He's not in the chaos that he's created. He's no longer descending in the way that he had been. He's no longer this disobedient, rebellious, running prophet. but he's still in a fish. His circumstances haven't changed one bit. I find that interesting. That even in the midst of a weird circumstance, he is thankful. And he recognizes God's action and his work and where he finds himself. A quote from Tim Keller. It's when a person comes to acknowledge his or her own sin and confess it before God, and when, as a consequence, God restores the broken creator and creation relationship, that's the real deliverance. It's not the release from the fish. What is the real deliverance? There's a restoration between Jonah and God. There's a realization by Jonah saying, God, I've made a mess. I've got seaweed around my head. I am being just descending down, down, down. And you heard me. And you rescued me. And you pulled me up from the pit that I have created and I have dove headlong into. You are the one that rescues. Thank you. And what Timothy Keller says is that it's not the circumstances changing. That's not what the rescue is. The rescue is the moment when Jonah and God are reconciled. And Jonah realizes just how much God loves him. And Jonah realizes just how much mercy God shows for him. And Jonah realizes that he is the one that has run away and that God is still there. And so he turns his eyes to the temple, the place where God's presence would be. It's what he says, I want to turn my eyes to the temple. I want to be close to you. God, I want things to be restored again. And so the good work of God happens in his life in the midst of what is still not a great circumstance. Because in case you didn't know, even though I'm saying it's rescue, he's still inside a fish. That's probably not good. I don't think that anybody signing up for that one. So the circumstances do not change, but his heart work, the work that God is doing on his heart, is actually happening. And in the midst of that, God moves and changes him. And then there's this verse right after that, verse 8. It says that there's a worthlessness and a distraction to chasing after idols. Like it's almost jarring in what happens here because he begins like there's a flow to this prayer that he's praying. It begins with I cried out and you heard me, and then he describes the circumstances of all these wavy sea things drowning him, and then he again says you pulled me up out of the pit and you rescued me, and then Jonah has this weird moment of reflection in verse 8 because he says, people who chase after idols, worthless idols in their lives, distract them and keep them from experiencing the salvation of God, the love of God. It's like, wait, where did that come from, Jonah? Is he reflecting on his own life? Is he reflecting on his own life, or is he reflecting on the sailors he was just with? I'm not sure, but he speaks a real truth. What is an idol? We would say, oh, I don't sacrifice anything to idols. Like I don't have a little totem in on my fireplace mantle or anything like that. Like I'm not doing that. We're a westernized culture for the most part. We don't typically do that. But what are the idols that we do worship? What are the things that we give ourselves to, our time, our money, our energy, our emotions, our minds? What are the things that we do give ourselves to with some hope of making our lives better? Because that's what they would do, is worship an idol so that their lives would be better. The crops would come and the rain would flow and the thing, there would be health, all these things, right? They're just trying to make their lives better. And so they worship an idol because of that, give sacrifice to an idol because of that. So what are the things that you slavishly give yourself to with the hopes that you're going to make your life better under your own strength and under your own ability and under your own finances and under your own intellect and under your own willpower. Because Jonah's reached an end. And he says, it's God that's the rescue. Him and him alone. And everything I've done is idle. It's worthless. It's worshiping something that doesn't mean anything. Because in the end, I'm stuck in a fish. And I've reached this point because I've descended so far away from God, trying to do it my way, trying to make it happen. And I've run so far that I find myself in a fish. And so, moment of clarity for Jonah. All my efforts, all anyone's efforts apart from God, what do they lead to? Last verse. But I, with shouts of grateful praise, I will sacrifice to you. What I vowed I will make good, and I will say, salvation comes only from the Lord. That word salvation there is hesed. I'm not going to try and say it like with the proper, but it's hesed. And it just means steadfast love. It means grace and mercy. It means loving kindness. See, in the end, what Jonah discovers is this. Even though he is disobedient, even though he is self-assured and self-righteous, even though he has created distance from he and God, even though he's done everything under his own power to this point, the thing that he says is, there's only one place in which there's actual kindness and love. There's only one place in which there is mercy and grace, which can change everything. There's only one place in which there might be a faithful love that endures through everything. And it's with him. It's with the Lord. And so, out of the depths, Jonah cries out. And out of the depths, he has these realizations, real moments of life focus where he needs to make some changes. And he needs to go to the one who can bring the love and the kindness and the mercy and the forgiveness that he so desperately needs. But it takes, for Jonah at least, getting down to the depths. In your bulletin, there was a little card, and we're going to have this every week, so just buckle up and be ready. There might be one in front of you. But on it, the prompt, or the response prompt this week is this. Finish this line for yourself. What is the rest of your prayer to God? And the first line is, from the depths. From the depths. And then write your prayer. What is it that you have to say to God from the depths? What is it that you have to say to God from the moments that you are feeling so far away and so distant? What is it that you have to say to God from the midst of your chaos that's going on in your life, whether it's your creation or somebody else's? What is it that you have to say to God that speaks what's going on in your heart and your mind? From the depths, I'm going to cry out, and I want to say this to you, Lord. I would encourage you. There should be pencils in front of you, or maybe you brought a pen. I would encourage you to jot something down on that. Because these moments of reflection cause us to be in a whale. We're stopping right now. We're not doing other things right now. And so maybe right now is the moment you say to God, from the depths I cry out. Why is this happening? Will you be my salvation? I need your love. I need your grace. I need your forgiveness. I need your patience. I need you to be the God of Hesed in my life today. You write your prayer. But speak to him something. When we close with this song, at some point during it, if you jot something down, I would encourage you to come forward. I've started moving the cards down so that there's more room at the top. Come forward, fold it in half, clip it on there. It's not for anyone else to see. I'm not reading these during the week, I promise you. All I'm doing is moving them down. But these are a reminder, a strong reminder for us each and every week of what it is that God's speaking and saying to us through the power of his word in the story of Jonah. What is God doing in our hearts as we reflect on who he is? What is God saying and prompting for us? Jonah prays from the depths, and he prays a genuine prayer of gratitude to God. And his ultimate revelation is this: it's nothing I can do, it's only through you. And in that moment, it says that and this is the gross way, right? It says that the whale vomits him out. It's when he realizes, oh, God is my only rescue. And this fish is a moment of pause. That's when he actually experiences the freedom bodily, after he's received the freedom of heart.